Welcome to episode 5 of the LewDog vlog. Join me back in the Fox boardroom. Unfortunately, got a very busy week of meetings, so no time to get out on the bank with Brad. So we've decided to do the links for this latest instalment from the office again. So it's worth mentioning that we're going to do a little giveaway at the end of this latest vlog, and we're going to be giving away 5 of the brand new Exocet marker float kits. There's going to be 5 winners selected. And basically, there's going to be a question right at the end of these links that you're going to have to answer. But to know the answer, you're going to have to watch the whole vlog to get the answer to the question that I'm going to ask at the end. And then we simply need you to put your answers in the comments below, and we're going to pick 5 at random with the right answer, and each one will get one of those brand new Exocet marker float kits. So let's crack on. We're back to the 22nd of August. And basically, Brad joined me on my Lincoln Syndicate to film the links for episode 4, which hopefully you've all watched by now. It was actually the Friday before the bank holiday weekend for August, and I'd decided that to try and get a longer session than normal, to arrange the links with Brad meant that I could fish the first day night and get a 4-night bank holiday weekend. So I was able to fish Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. The weather forecast for the whole weekend was very, very hot. It was going to be 25 degrees plus all weekend. And so I decided to head for the shallowest part of the lake. I managed to get into a swim called the Last One, which, as the name suggests, is the last swim on a particular bank. Basically, you've got the swim, and then down the right-hand margin, there's a rope that goes across to the sort of adjacent margin, and it creates an out-of-bounds area that the fish can sit in. Behind that rope, they can't get fish for. They're very chilled there. They can sunbathe. And basically, the swim I was in is one of the 2 swims that fish either side of that rope and give you the opportunity to catch those fish as they come in and out of that out-of-bounds area. I actually fished pretty poorly for the first 48 hours of my stay. I'd fished much further out than I should have done in hindsight. I decided to put 3 rods on a spot at range, expecting the fish to sort of come in and out of the bay and pick them up a long way away from the rope area. I thought I wouldn't bother them close to that rope. I'd let them come out and then pick them up a bit further out. But after 48 hours of catching nothing and seeing fish show a lot closer in, I finally sort of had a word with myself, as it were. And yeah, on the Saturday afternoon, I decided a whole rethink of strategy was needed. So set about having a little bit of a lead about closer in. I got a few okay drops, but the problem was there's quite a bit of silkweed close in. So I decided to change tact completely. So I took off my 360 rigs and I tied 2 rods up with hinge stiff rigs with long semi-stiff booms, so that the boom sort of sits nicely over the silkweed, and with that big pop-up section, you know you presented over that silkweed. So I've put 2 rods on the hinge, and I decided to bait up with just boilies, so the boilies would sit nicely over that silkweed, and as the fish were sort of used to going down, picking one bait up at a time, hopefully that hinge rig would nail them. For my 3rd rod, which would be my right-hand rod, I decided to wade it all the way down my margin and place it by hand next to the rope. Here I could see a real banging clear spot that a lot of people obviously fish and catch from, so I didn't need to have a pop-up rig on that, so I decided to go with a fluorocarbon D-rig with the Snowman hook bait, exactly the same rig as what I'd used in episode 4 when I was fishing at Mustang Lake. I had a little Ester fruit cream pop-up on top of a Triple X bottom bait, and on that rod I decided to bait up with particles and some boilies on a much tighter spot, hoping to nail a bite pretty quick as a fish came in, I wasn't trying to get them to move around between mouthfuls. This was just a little trap, a few particles, a few crushed boilies, and then that snowman hook bait with a bright topper. So those rods all were in position by Saturday afternoon. Everything was sorted for the evening, and I went to bed feeling really confident. And it was no surprise that I woke up to a few bleeps on the right hand rod, which was being fished down to that out of bounds rope. After a bit of a fraught battle, I finally landed my first fish of the session, and it turned out to be quite a special one. Finally off the mark after my third night of this bank holiday weekend, and what a fish to start with. 31.9 common, my biggest common to date from this Lincoln syndicate. An absolute beauty bar of gold. Great wake up call at first light. Really happy. Snowman hook bait, same presentation I was using at Mustang a couple of weeks ago. First time I've tried it on here. It's worked a treat. Look at that beauty. Put that rig on last night and it's rattled off 12 hours later. Fantastic. Gonna get her back. There's a few showing in the area, and who knows, might get another one yet. The rest of the Sunday proved pretty uneventful. The fish spent a lot of time behind the rope, just sort of enjoying the sun and sunbathing. But I did feel pretty confident that Monday morning, hopefully the bite time would come and I'd get another chance. I felt most confident on that right hand rod that I'd had the bite from the morning before, but it actually turned out to be the middle rod this time that went on Monday morning, and I was rewarded with yet another cracking fish from the Lincoln syndicate. Final morning, and had my second fish of the trip, and then my second 30. This time a mirror, bit of a character, not going to win any beauty contests, but it rocked like mad. And yeah, change of tactics yesterday, over to a hinge stiff rig over boilies on a rod to an area where the fish had been showing a couple of mornings previous, and it's paid off this morning. Fantastic, really pleased with that. And yeah, I think there's probably another hour or two yet of bite time, and then it'll be heading for home. Busy week in Belgium with work coming up. Sadly no fishing, but should be good fun with the lads. That mirror turned out to be the last fish of the session for me, but it wasn't the last fish I was about to see on the bank. After I packed up, I went down to see my good mate Tony, who you may remember from episode 4 had that big hit at Mustang. He was enduring a 3-night blank further down the lake in the open water, and it looked really slim chances for him. He was fishing in 13 foot of water, and like I say, it's been bright sunshine all weekend, but you can't keep an old dog down, as they say. And literally just before he had to reel in on that Monday morning, he was away on his right hand rod and he landed an absolute brute of a mirror at over 38 pounds. Just goes to show you should never give up, and even when the conditions look really set against you, just having that positivity and carrying on can really help you. So I got home from that long bank holiday weekend session and I had to have a pretty fast turnaround. I got cleaned up, had some dinner with Abby, spent a couple of hours with her, and then I was heading down south to Essex because I was having to spend a night in a hotel near the Fox offices. And that was because the very next morning at really early hours, I was going to be heading to Belgium for the annual Fox sales meeting. So I decided to break the journey up and stay at a hotel in Essex. Quite a few of the other lads had the same idea. So we all met up, loaded the vans, got everything ready, and then we set off the next morning, bright and early, over to Belgium for a 2-day sales conference. The first day of the sales meeting saw myself having to make 3 presentations to our European sales force. These presentations were all about the marketing performance of all of our brands over the past 12 months and also set out our vision for the following 12 months. Always quite a bit of pressure when you're doing such presentations, but I've been doing them a few years now and they went nice and smoothly, and the feedback from all of the guys was very positive. with that meeting out the way, the second day was a little bit more chilled for me. I was able to relax a lot more, and it involved heading over to a lake nearby to the conference centre, where all of our brand new products for all of the brands were on display for our sales force to pick up, try, and get a full briefing from the brand managers prior to going to the shops and selling them for the autumn. There's so many good products there. It was very hard for me to pick out one particular product that was my favourite. But from a cart point of view, I must admit the new power packs are really, really nice, and something that I will benefit from with doing a lot of work from the bank. I even actually managed to have a go on a seat box whilst we were there that day and tried out some of the Matrix match fishing stuff. We had a little mini match between myself, Steve Phillips, Harry Charrington and Stephen, the marketing director at Fox. And yeah, it was first to the catch free fish, and I was lucky enough to win that. So with 2 really intense days of work out the way, it was time for a few of us to sort of let our hair down and relax. If you're going to work hard, I believe you should also play hard too. So a group of us decided to go out into the local town of Breda that night. It actually coincided with the local university's Freshers Week, so the town was absolutely rammed with students. We had a real good night, and probably the highlight of the night was watching Matt tackle a shot that was on fire to kind of a real massive degree, like the whole bar was on fire. You'll see in the footage that we run. I certainly wouldn't have wanted to tackle that drink, but fair play to Matt for doing it. It was a great few days away. But I must admit, I was, with having fished for 4 nights before that trip, I was really starting to miss Abby. So I decided that no fishing would be in order for the weekend once I got back from working overseas. It wasn't until the following weekend that the rods were back out. I decided at the last minute to enter my Lincoln Syndicate's annual pairs match. Unfortunately, because I made the decision such a last minute, I wasn't able to find a partner, so I had to pay the whole entry fee on my own. And to confound things, came out last in the draw, so it wasn't really a great weekend. I did actually manage to get a bite on the first night, but that fell off close in. I got loads of silkweed caught up in my line and it got jammed in the tit ring, and I was unable to get the fish to the net, and as I put the rod down to try and strip the weed off, the line went slack, the hook fell out and the fish swam away. So yeah, not a great weekend, and I think I paid 40 quid for the privilege to fish a lake that I already pay a load of money to fish. So yeah, but in all seriousness, it's a great event. On the Saturday afternoon, everybody reels in, we have a big barbecue, a few cans of beer, and a real good laugh. And it was good to catch up with some of the guys that I don't actually see. Some of the midweek anglers were there that weekend fishing. And yeah, I went home on the Sunday having blanked, but well done to Simon and Dixie. I think they had 2 or 3 fish to win the match. It didn't fish very well, the weather was against us, but yeah, I think those guys had 2 or 3 fish, so well done to them. I didn't get to fish the weekend after that for one thing and another, but I was able to get out on the bank on the Tuesday in the middle of that week, and that was because myself, Harry and Brad were driving up to the northeast to Mark Pitcher's Wainstones pool to film a 48-hour or 36-hour guest sessions piece on his lake. Myself and Harry were going to be fishing and Brad was going to be filming. We've been looking forward to this trip for ever such a long time, and as we arrived at the venue, it looked absolutely stunning, was better than I remembered from my trip there last year. The weather was really hot, the fish were on the surface, you could see them swimming around, they were basking in amongst the weed beds, and myself and Harry were really eager to get fishing. I don't want to go into too much detail because the guest sessions will come out at a later date, but from a personal point of view, I did find the fishing pretty tricky. The fish, as I said, they were spending a lot of time up in the water, in the weed. Surface fishing and zigs are banned on that lake, so we weren't able to use that in our armoury. But I did manage a couple of fish. My biggest was over 30 pounds as well. A real nice fish. Really pleased to catch such a big fish from so far north as well. So yeah, that was a real good trip. And because I'd fished in the week, I decided that that following weekend I was going to have another weekend off and not do any fishing. But I did have something really exciting planned on the Saturday. So we're now on Saturday the 21st of September, and I was meeting up bright and early with an excavation company to do some test holes on some land that I've acquired. with a view of digging a lake in the future. We wanted to see how much clay was present on this land to see whether there's enough clay there to create a lake of 2 to 3 acres, what we wanted. It was really exciting watching those diggers put the buckets into the ground the first time, and you're just really hoping that the clay is there, because it makes life a lot easier if you have the clay on site. Thankfully, the test holes proved that there was lots and lots of clay present, so that's the first hurdle overcome in what will be a pretty long process before I ever get to fulfill that dream of having the lake. We now got to put in for planning permission, which can never be an easy thing, but hopefully that will go pretty smoothly. And all being well, we'd be looking to start digging the lake in spring 2020. So throughout these vlogs, hopefully I'll be able to chart the progress of that project, and hopefully one day we'll have some footage of some fish swimming around in that lake, but we'll see. I wasn't too fussed about missing fishing that weekend because I knew the following weekend I had a real special social trip planned to Home Fen in Cambridgeshire. The plan was to go up with some of the lads from work and a few of our friends also, who are sort of friends of Fox, if you like. So I'd been really looking forward to that, so I wasn't that bothered about missing fishing the weekend before. However, before I could even think about getting my gear ready or think about casting a rod out at Home Fen, I had a really busy week at work. This involved meetings down at Fox in Essex, meetings at my home up near Stamford, and then also 2 days of job interviews out in Romania. First time I've ever been to Romania. A lovely country, met some fantastic people, and the food and hospitality the hospitality was fantastic, and I hope to go back and actually do some fishing in the future. So with the trip to Romania out the way, I actually got home at I think midnight on the Thursday night, and we were due to be meeting up at a cafe near Home Fen early the next morning. So for the next couple of hours, I sorted all my gear out in the garage and loaded the van, and it wasn't until after 2 AM that I finally got to bed. I think my alarm was going off 4 hours later to wake me up, and I was soon making my way near to Cambridge to meet up with the guys at a cafe for breakfast and also to draw for swims prior to going to the lake. As you can imagine, we're all really excited. Home Fen's a lake that is home to some of the biggest carp in the whole of the UK. And we were just all filled with anticipation, hoping that we could all get a good draw and get on the fish. From a personal point of view, the draw didn't go so well for me. I wasn't really happy with the swim that I got, but thankfully in the cafe I was sat next to Christian Hoyle, who drew a flyer. He drew the Party Point double swim. I knew this was a double swim. A friend of mine had told me that there's plenty of room on there for 2 people, so I was very quick to ask Christian if he minded if I joined him on that double swim. I think I beat a few of the other lads to it who had hoped to do the same, but you snooze, you lose, as they say. So I was first in. Christian said not a problem to share the swim, so I was a lot happier that I was now got a decent swim. When we arrived at the lake, it was only fair to let Christian pick which side he wanted. After all, it was his swim. The intel I'd had from my friends who had fished the lake previously was to say that really it didn't matter if he was on the left or right of that swim. There's 2 big gullies that run parallel to the swim, and both the left and the right fish into those gullies, so it really didn't matter. So Christian opted for the left hand side. He had some islands off to the left which gave him a few extra features to fish to should he need, and that left me on the right. So I'm not ashamed to admit, as we were on a holiday trip, I did take my old friend the Jolly Roger with me, the old bait boat. Again, a couple of my friends who fished the lake said it was a massive advantage. And with the big 30-mile-an-hour southwesterly side winds we had, it did prove to be a real advantage for making sure I could get my hook bait and my free offerings on the money each time. The evening was pretty uneventful for everyone. I did manage a couple of tench, but other than that, the carp were pretty quiet. We had created quite a bit of disturbance around the lake, so I don't think it was any surprise that it might take us a bit of time before one of us were off the mark. And actually it was myself who was the first to get off the mark. Just into first light on the Saturday morning, my right hand rod was away, very twitchy take. I actually thought it was another tench, and this fish just came in on the surface all the way in, just kept shaking its head, fudding like that. And eventually Christian did the duty with the net perfectly, and we had the first fish of the trip safely banked. That fish turned out to be a 42-pound mirror, so fantastic start, lovely dark fish. And not long after I put that back, word was round on our WhatsApp group that Scott had also banked one, a 36 pounder. So 2 fish on the bank the first morning, and you know, the smallest one was 36 pound. Absolutely brilliant. Later that morning, Sean was the next person to get off the mark, and my word, he got off the mark in proper style, landing a 59 pound absolute horse of a fish. Proper big, deep set thing. The biggest fish I'd ever seen in the UK at that stage. I think the biggest fish any of the lads had seen in the UK at that stage, to be honest with you. Brilliant to see Sean buzzing with that. He's on a right run himself with his fishing at the moment. He'd just come back from Croatia where he'd landed an 80 pounder. Then his first bite back in England was a 59 pounder. Absolutely brilliant. So having seen that fish on the bank, back in the swim, I was absolutely buzzing. And that, you know, the thought that there's probably maybe 10 fish bigger than that swimming around in front of us was just mind-blowing. A little while later, I was away again, this time my middle rod. And yeah, an altogether slightly different battle. This fish was pulling a lot harder and it felt heavy from the off. And yeah, I think it must have been a sort of 10-15 minute battle. And then eventually this absolute tank appeared a few rod lengths out. Well, I just can't describe that feeling. My knees started to knock. Christian was obviously aware that this was a real big fish. Yeah, I got really, really nervous. But thankfully, the hook held well. Christian did his job perfectly with the net, and I soon had an absolute monster in the net. As we peered in that net, I just remember saying to Christian, that's bigger than Sean's fish. Not that long ago, we'd seen Sean's fish, 59 pounder, and we're now looking at something that looks evidently bigger in the net. Yeah, the adrenaline was really getting hold of me. I was absolutely buzzing. I was with some of my real good mates, and you know, we're catching fish and enjoying it, and that's what it's all about. So all the guys wound in and came round as you would do to come and see this fish. Up on the scales, it went 62 pound 5 ounces. The biggest fish I've ever seen in the UK, the biggest fish I've ever caught and most likely will ever catch in the UK. And it was a real nice one as well. Some big scales on its side, nice and dark. I did struggle a little bit to hold it, but you know, we got through it. A bit of grimacing at times to lift her up for the camera, but yeah, it was brilliant watching it swim away at the end. Such a thick set fish just waddling away. And yeah, my weekend was absolutely made with that, I tell you. Later on that day, Sean managed another couple of fish, I think a 44 and a 47. And yeah, I was just hoping really for Christian to get in on the action. You know, he'd been so kind to let me share the swim with him. And you know, I'd had 2 fish and he was yet to get off the mark. So I was really hoping. I even in fact offered to reel in and not fish for the rest of the weekend, and said to Christian, get your rods out where I'm catching from. But he was having none of it. He wanted to carry on doing what he was doing, and he insisted that I carried on fishing. So that was that 62 pounder turned out to be my last action. However, on the final morning, Brad got in on the action and managed 2 fish in as many hours. Firstly, a fish just under 42 pound, and then he followed that up a couple of hours later with a new PB of 44 pound. It was great to see him so happy to be catching fish of that size. Brilliant to get off the mark before we had to go home. And yeah, what a fantastic trip. In 48 hours fishing, we'd banked 8 fish between us. The smallest was a 36. There was a 41, 2 42s, a 44, a 47, a 59 and a 62. Absolutely ridiculous fishing. And yeah, if you're looking for a venue in the UK for a holiday to go to from a fishing point of view, I can't recommend Home Fen highly enough. Why go to France when it's on your doorstep here in the UK? Okay, so as promised, we're now going to do a giveaway to win 5 of these X-Set marker floats. 5 winners will each win 1 of these. So you have to answer a question, put it in the comments below. The question is, which hook bait combination did I use to create my snowman when I was fishing on my Lincoln Syndicate and I caught my 31 pound 9 ounce common? So you need to comment below the name of the bottom bait and the name of the pop-up that was on top of that for that snowman hook bait. And we're going to pick 5 people at random after 24 hours of this video being live, and those 5 people will be contacted and be sent one of these brand new Exocet marker float kits. So good luck, get commenting below. I hope you've enjoyed this latest episode. If you've got any feedback, please also put that below. Send me a private message on my social media. Always really interested to hear feedback and try and make these vlogs as entertaining as possible for you guys to enjoy. Until next time, tight lines, and I hope you get amongst a few yourself.